Hi, and welcome to this tutorial on using the WHAM Demonstrator, an app that allows you to explore and play with our WHAM model and generate some cool gameplay sequences. WHAM stands for World and Human Action Model. It's a generative model that has been trained on both video game images and the game controller actions associated with them. This means that it can generate sequences of images from a video game, either predicting what action the player might take next, or taking input and responding in the right way. WHAM therefore generates images and actions as if the game was really being played, but really it's the model generating gameplay frame by frame. As the input is a combination of images and actions, it also means that you can start anywhere in the game, and you can get creative and add new things to see how the model responds. This tutorial will be about the WHAM Demonstrator app. We're going to introduce how to use it, take a quick look at some of the features that allow you to explore the model too. For the WHAM Demonstrator to work, you'll also need to have a WHAM model and API running. You'll be able to set this up following our guide on Hugging Face, or the AI Foundry in Azure. We recommend checking out our paper too to learn more about the potential of WHAM as a creative material. The WHAM model we'll be using today has been trained on the awesome battle arena game, Bleeding Edge, developed by Ninja Theory, and you can find more details about our dataset in our documentation. Let's get started. So, when you open the WHAM Demonstrator for the first time, you need to provide a URL for your API endpoint. In my case, I have our model hosted on a machine with some GPUs. If I expand the options panel here, you can see I've added the IP address and port number with the HTTP prefix. This is saved, so next time I open the app, it's still going to be there. Now, to start generating new gameplay frames, we need something to seed the model with. The app comes with some starter examples shown here in the main area. Each example contains 10 frames and actions, and if you roll your mouse over them left to right, you get a little preview of what the frames do. You can also start with your own images or a sequence that you might have previously created using the File menu in the top left. In this case though, I'm going to start with this example of our character going up the steps. With the example open, I'm going to give you a quick tour of the interface. This main area shows the currently selected frame. Below it, we can see our timeline, and we're going to look at how this timeline is used throughout the tutorial. You can also resize the space between these two areas using this grey bar in the middle. When you click on a frame, you'll see the main area display the frame image. On the right-hand panel, we have some sections for settings. We have a section for layers, which we'll take a look at later, and we have a section for controller. The controller section shows what the current controller action is for the selected frame, and it also provides some controls for changing that action. We can see for each of these frames, the left stick is held forward on the controller, allowing the character to move forward up the level. Just above the timeline, we have our prediction controls. The in number is the number of seed frames that we want to provide to the model as context. The out number is the number of frames we'd like the model to produce for us. And then reps or repetitions is how many different branches we'd like the model to produce. This is a great way to see some different options or some variations of how the model might predict differently. When you want to generate some frames, you simply select the frame you want to predict from and then click on the predict button. So let's do our first prediction. I'm going to generate 3 branches with an output of 10 frames. I'm going to go from this last frame here. So let's hit predict. You can see the generated frames popping in as the model generates the results. You're also going to see that the WHAM model is producing results sometimes at a faster than normal speeds during prediction. Please note that model speeds can vary and that our version of the WHAM model that we're releasing now is not a real-time model. Okay, so once I have my predictions, I can use my mouse or arrow keys to explore the different sequences. Let's look at this top row. So it looks like the character is just moving forwards. Very much the same for the middle row. And the bottom row too, which is kind of likely, right, as that's the most likely thing the character is going to do at this point. So what I also have in this particular level are 3 launch pads ahead of me, one on the left, one in the middle, and one on the right. And these provide access to the main level area over in the distance. So I'd actually like to create some sequences that go off into each of those different pathways. Now, I could just let the model generate and see if it produces that kind of output, or I can give the model a little nudge in the right direction. So on this top frame, I'm going to actually move the stick on the controller left a little to encourage the character to go left. And on the bottom row, I'm going to move it to the right to encourage the character to go right. Okay, cool. Let's set the repetitions to 1, because I just want to generate one branch at a time. And let's predict our left frame and see if the character does indeed go left. So it's looking very good. The character has taken the left pathway and they're sat there ready to go. Let's do the same for the middle. Fantastic. We've gone down the middle pathway, and then let's do the last row here for going right. Oh, yeah, slightly more, but that looks good. It looks like we're going to head down the right channel. Amazing. Right, we now want to use these jump pads and see if we can get over to the main area. Now, it's going to take a few more than 10 frames to get there, so I'm just going to up our up count to 50. And then we're going to generate, first of all, the top row. And we're going to be able to watch this happen as the model generates. So I'm going to hit predict. And hopefully our player is going to hit the jump pad. Doesn't always happen. Excellent. So we've now launched and we're moving up into the air, and hopefully we're going to land on this left-hand side of the level over here, if we can make the wall. Good landing. And now we can see that our predictions have finished. So we'll jump back to the rows. This time we're going to predict our middle sequence. So we're hoping that the character is going to head down the center, heading left and right a little bit. Let's hope he's going to hit the ramp and then launch over into the main area of the level. Here we go. That's cool. We're not actually yet. We're coming back towards the middle now. Fingers crossed we make the wall. And it's a good landing. Amazing. And let's go for our last sequence down here. So this time we want it to go, want him to go right and then land over on the right-hand side of the map. So hitting this last launch pad. Here we go. And fingers crossed we clear the wall. We've landed, and it looks like, looking at the controller and the frames as well, that the character wants to head over and up these steps and head on to the right. Amazing. Okay, cool. So we now have these 3 quite diverse starting points. We can either start off at the left-hand side of the map, the middle, or the right-hand side of the map. I think what we'll do is we're going to take the middle route, as I'd like to head up these steps and create some action up here. So let's first of all set our outback to 10. And this time I'm going to set our reps to 3. And let's see where the model takes us next. Let's hit predict. So what's great about having these multiple branches, it just kind of gives a fun way to explore some different variations on the model. Let's take a look at this top row. So that's heading straight up the steps. That's exactly what I want. Let's do the middle. So the character here is actually turned onto the left, so we'll skip over that. And our third generation, very similar to the first, so going straight up the steps. Let us do one more generation from here to make sure our character does hit the steps. So I'm going to hit 1 repetition this time. And this is great. Our character's nicely moving up the steps. Now, actually, this is a great moment to show you how you can do some things to help manage the timeline view a little bit. Obviously, we've generated a good number of frames already and generated some branches, but sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to keep up with what you've created. So we've got a couple of different ways of viewing the timeline. Now, we've already discussed resizing the area using this grey bar, but we also have a zoom control here. If I slide it right down to the bottom, that shrinks the timeline thumbnails and it gives us a much higher view of the different branches and the different sequences we've created so far. Obviously it does shrink the thumbnails too, so I'm going to bring this back up a little bit. We've also got this really cool snapshot button which takes an image of the entire timeline, which is kind of a great way to preserve what you've created with the WHAM demonstrator. Okay, so I'm going to head over to here. And I'm going to do one more generation just to get us up to the top of the steps. because I'd like to actually add a moment of action now that we've come to the top of these steps here. So something I mentioned earlier is about being able to add things into the scene and seeing what the model does with those things that you've added. So you could drop in a power-up, you could drop in a character, you could drop in a wall, or something completely different. To do this, we're going to use the layers panel over here on the right-hand side. And I think I'm going to add another character. If I go back a few frames, I'm imagining having a character emerge from behind this wall and then run towards our player. So let's jump back a few frames. Maybe we'll start from this one here. And to add a layer, I'm going to click the plus button and I'm going to pick an image which contains another character from the game. And now that this layer has been added and has appeared in the panel over here, I can use my mouse to move the layer around and use my mouse wheel to also resize it. So like I said, I like him to look as if he's coming out from behind the wall. So my first frame I'd like to place just here. Now the WHAM model responds best when it has a few example context frames. So I'm actually going to create this short sequence of 4 or 5 frames showing an animation of this character coming into view. So with the character positioned here for the first frame, I've got this handy button, copy to next frame, which will take all of those layers and pop them onto the next frame for me. And then that allows me to move it slightly, make him slightly larger, move him to the left. We'll copy to the next frame. We'll move him more to the left, make him a little bit larger still. Again, so it really looks like it's coming towards our player. And let's do this one more time. So across those 5 frames, I've actually created a short animation that looks like this character's emerging from behind the wall and then running towards our player. So with that, let us go back to predicting and seeing how the model adopts this additional character that I put in. So I'm going to hit predict, and notice that I haven't done it at the end of the timeline. You can hit predict from any frame on the timeline that you like. You can jump into the middle of any sequence and hit predict, and it will generate new branches for you. Okay, let's see what has happened with our character. So in the top row, the model has taken it, and it looks like we are launching into an attack of the character. So that's very cool. For the next row down, it looks like the character is dashing straight through us and past us. So that's not so great. And in the bottom row, it actually looks like the character completely disappeared, which of course can happen with these models as it's generating images and frames on the fly. So I think from here we're going to take the top row and I'm going to generate another 3 branches to see how this action can continue. Kind of keen to work out if this is going to be a baddie that we're going to encounter or maybe an ally. So in this top row, it looks like it's a friendly character just hanging out. In the middle row, it looks like we're actually beginning to attack. And then actually we've ended this sequence with the character turning around and running away, which is not quite what I'm after. Let's go for the bottom row and see what happens. Here, actually, I can recognise this healing icon, so it actually looks like the character is trying to heal us, which is also nice. Okay, we're going to go with the top row where the character ended up friendly, and I'm going to generate one more sequence from here. Because I'd like to move up in towards this main area of the level. So checking out the 3 branches we got. This one is nicely moving up into the main area. This second row actually looks like we've launched some kind of special attack, which is pretty cool. And then this third row, very similar to the top, just moving up into the main part of the level. Okay, cool. So we've looked at using the model to do some predictions. We've looked at actually adding in some extra images and layers to create some action. Another feature of the WHAM demonstrator is to also take real controller input, generating 1 frame at a time. So it's almost like you're playing the game, but in slow motion. So if you have an Xbox compatible controller connected, when you press the buttons, the WHAM demonstrator will take that input and then generate the next frame for you 1 at a time. If you don't have a controller, that's okay. you can also create the controller input that you'd like to here, and then click the Predict from Input button, which will do the same thing. I have my controller here, and what I do know is there's a jump pad just off to the left of the camera on this level. So I'm actually going to try and direct our generations to move our character towards that jump pad, and then we'll see if we can use the jump pad too. So as I hold down controls, we can see that the model will start to generate frames, and then move my character. So I'm holding the left stick, and now I'm holding it forwards, and now my character's navigating forwards. And the place I want to get to is, you can see this yellow area here. This is the jump pad that I'd like to get to. So let's advance. Get to the jump pad. And actually, to use the jump pad, as I get onto it, I also need to hold down the jump button too. And then that will activate it. So let's hold down the jump button too. And we can also see that reflected here in the controller panel too. So you can see that jump has now been activated. And now I just need to try and land on this surface. Here we go. Up and over. And it looks good. We've managed to land on the grass. And I think what I'll do is I'll finish this sequence by generating 10 final frames just to see where the model would have taken us next. Here we go. What's happened is it's steered right and then beginning to take us over to this part of the level area. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so well, that was an intro to some of the different ways that you can use the WHAM demonstrator to play with our WHAM model. Let's first of all zoom out to see what we've created, and then we'll talk about how you can save your timeline too. So as I scroll back, you can see all of the different branches that we've generated as we've gone along, going all the way back. And there's lots of branches that we didn't continue, that we abandoned, and ones that we did continue. And the great thing about the WHAM demonstrator is you can go back to any point in the gameplay sequences and just continue to iterate and generate more gameplay frames. You don't just have to go in one direction. The WHAM demonstrator also makes it easy for you to play back a sequence and watch it almost as if you're watching a gameplay video. To do that, I'll first of all just increase the size of the frames again. You want to find the last frame in the sequence that you want to watch, which will be this one here. And you can check this box in the top right hand corner of the frame. And what this does is this selects all of the frames in the timeline that led up to that moment. And then you can filter the timeline by clicking the selected frames only, which puts them all into one nice long row. And if I jump back to the beginning of this row and click on the first frame, I can now hold my right arrow key in the WHAM demonstrator, and it's actually going to play through the frames as if I'm watching a video back of the gameplay. So let's do that. So we can see my character navigating through, hitting that middle aisle as we go, onto the jump pad, landing nicely. We're going up the steps, and this is that moment of action we created with the character that we introduced. And now we're going to try and head left, navigate to the jump pad, up we go, and then the sequence finishes with us moving along that higher platform. So, finally, if you want to save your whole timelines and come back to it later, you can use the export option up here. There's an export timeline option which will save a folder full of the images that you've generated, as well as a JSON file that contains the construction of the timeline. And then if you want to open it and come back to it later, you can use the File Open Timeline option, which will allow you to reopen that timeline back into the WHAM demonstrator. I'd like to thank you so much for checking out this tutorial on the WHAM demonstrator. We're really excited to see what people use it for and the things that they create.